Welcome to episode 9 of EADE IT, where we talk about anything that the viewing audience asks us. You can go to see previous episodes at airu.tv, the website that's scrolling across the bottom of your screen. And if you want to ask a question that may be asked in the future on the show, write to us at info@airu.tv. And this episode is one of many that we're bringing to talk about various subjects that might be of interest to the wider viewing audience, but is of interest to the person asking the question. And that person is Rick Rosner. Rick, hi.
Hello. All right. So I have a question from not his real name, not his real city, Jack Ortega from Beaumont, Texas.
Okay.
Writes, my wife is out of my league. Former model, smart, lively, funny, decent mom, but every couple of years she goes out and has sex with someone else. Says it makes her feel alive, never more than once or twice with the same person. Says she's not going to leave me. She says I can do it too, not that I could unless I hired a prostitute. My thought is just to put up with it. What say you?
Well, that leads me to the spiritual principle of acceptance, that we accept things that we cannot change. We change things that we can, and we ask for the wisdom to know the difference. And is this something that you can change, or is this something that you have to accept? So what do you think, Rick?
Well, the answer is pretty much in the way he writes the letter, at least what I think, which is I think he wants to stay with her. He lists all the things that are great about her. And then there's the one thing that's bad, which is she goes out every couple of years and bangs a rando. I assume, I don't know, there wasn't, maybe it would suck worse if it were somebody she knows.
Right.
But my thought, and I'm somebody with low self-esteem. My family was divided into has my sibs and I, low self-esteem versus high self-esteem. I'm on the low end. So when I get with somebody, I want to stick with them because I'm afraid I'll never get with somebody again.
But I'd like to stop you there, Rick. Is that a fear of abandonment, which is something I hear a great deal of?
Kinda, yeah.
That's a principle in the adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families. They talk about the fear of abandonment as one of the primary motives to stick in relationships that aren't working for you. And your relationship seems to be working for you.
Yeah, we've been married for almost 35 years.
Right. So, but the low self-esteem, how do you deal with that?
Well, okay, it's not totally low self-esteem. It's an acknowledgement that I have no game, that I was not great at getting with women. Okay. And certainly now I would be even worse. I'm 65. My hair sucks. I look goofy. And so I'm not going anywhere. But there are high self-esteem. I have siblings who have high self-esteem, and they would have no problem dumping somebody for any reason or really no reason because they were confident they could find somebody else who would want to be with them as quickly as they wanted to.
Right. Right. I understand. I went to my 50th high school reunion, and you can do the math. And I was expecting all these 68-year-old women to throw themselves at me, and it didn't happen. And
yeah, all the women who I'm a few years away from my 50th, all the women who wouldn't go out with me in high school, they are now plump little church ladies. We get older, and but this guy, I would, if he can deal with it. When I hear my wife is out of my league, I think he's with a 10. I don't know if Gen Z thinks in terms of that 1 to 10 scale, but his wife sounds like a 10 in a number of areas. And there's this one bad thing that she goes out and for me, I would take that. I like the deal I have, but if I were in his shoes, I think I would take the deal. I mean, there's a risk that she goes out and she bangs a rando, and it's really great, and she decides to keep doing it, and that's a whole different situation.
Right. And not to mention, venereal disease or something like that, bringing
Right.
that home. So it's an interesting concept to me because I came of age in the 70s, and women were sexually empowered then. They had the control over their reproductive systems, and they felt empowered to have sex for sex enjoyment. And of course, as you say, we've all gotten older, and we all experienced the 80s and AIDS and all of that kind of stuff, and so our attitudes towards rando sex is different than it was.
Yeah. So I've been watching Alien Earth, which is the
Yeah,
TV
yeah,
sequel or prequel to Alien the movie, which was made in 1979. And it's caused me to think about the original movie. So in 1979, we were in the middle of a herpes epidemic. The disco era had been going on, and Americans were infecting each other with herpes at a fantastic rate, along with other STDs. Well, people were also spreading AIDS, but we didn't know it yet.
right.
Also, people, along with the empowerment of women sexually and otherwise, people were realizing that we were a very rapey culture, that looking at sex, that this was the begin, this was deep into the second wave of feminism. And so if you look at the original Alien movie, the monster is very sexual. It's got a head shaped like a penis, and the artist was known that they hired, that they based the alien design on, was known for making disturbing alien crossed with sexual imagery. And so and it was about, the alien has various steps in his life cycle, which involve penetration. It's got a thing that jumps on your face and sticks a thing down your throat. Then something grows in your stomach and penetrates you going out. So what made Alien disturbing largely was sex. The idea that America had, that we're having lots of sex, but it's also a little creepy. The new Alien it takes place in the same future, but what gives us the creeps is not so much sex. The Alien TV series is about how we are fragile, little, dumb creatures and are under threat from a number of alien species, because Alien Earth has 5 terrible species instead of just one. And it's got a bunch of threatening robots and semi-robots, and it reflects our anxiety that AI is coming to kick our asses.
Yes. And Alien Earth, is Timothy Oliphant in that?
Yeah, and he's really great, and he's super
great.
creepy because they bleached his hair and his eyebrows. He plays a robot, a conscious, thinking robot in the shape of a human, and he is constantly indicating that the humans are kind of pieces of crap. He's in charge of a bunch of synthetic people,
right?
And he tells them, get over when you were in a human body, you were food. You ate flesh and you are flesh. Get over it. And he's telling them to quit respecting humans, that humans are just crap. Though he doesn't say that right to the humans, but we can tell that he thinks the humans are expendable.
Mm-hmm. And I also loved him in Justified. Did you see? And City Primeval?
He plays kind of a cocky prick really well.
Why do I like him so much?
Well, I
Am I
like
identifying with
I
that?
like guys like that. It goes back to my having no game, that I wish I could have that casual contempt for everybody and have it work for me.
Yeah. But that's not something that I aspire to, a contempt. We have this phrase that I hear quite often is contempt prior to investigation. And I want that on my tombstone, if I have a tombstone.
I think it mean when you say contempt prior to, you hear an idea and you think, well, that sounds like bullshit, and then you set it aside. You don't pay it any more attention, and we do that every day, and we have to do it more and more because we get hit with more stuff every day.
Right.
I mean, we just had the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
About a week ago, maybe even, and since then we've been hit with an avalanche of sentiment. Some of it, and like the right got it, tried to get in there first with the idea that Charlie was a saint, a martyr, a happy warrior, happy to go on college campuses and debate anybody, and preaching from the Bible and only preaching love. And in reality, no, he said, I mean, nobody deserves to be killed for what they. I mean, I deplore the freaking murder. At the same time, Charlie was said a lot of heinous, racist, divisive stuff, and he was a huckster. He'd amassed a fortune of $12 million at the age of 31 by leading Tea Party USA, which was his organization to recruit young bros for the most part and broettes into MAGA politics. But if you said anything bad about what he stood for, you risked getting canceled. It's harder to cancel me. I've still been very careful, because reasonably careful, because really I don't want anybody coming to our house. Right. But people have been fired for saying that there was an editorial writer for the Washington Post who was fired for just running quotes from Charlie Kirk in an editorial saying, not everything he stood for was great.
Was admirable, right?
Yeah, and so there's a lot of BS flying around, and that where I like on Twitter or X, like if I see like stuff coming from a MAGA account in reply to me or somebody else, and they have like 300 followers, I'm like, and they're just echoing some other crap that they've heard, I'm like, I'm not going to learn anything new from this person, and I'll just mute them so I don't have to hear them anymore. If it's a bigger account, or if it's, I want to know what MAGA is thinking. I don't want to put my head in the sand, but I don't want to hear a bunch of noise either. But yeah, I exercise, what do you call it? Contempt before, what's the...
Before investigation.
Before investigate, I
investigate.
I mute dozens of people at first glance. And if I looked at them a little more, like a lot of these people, like a ton of MAGAs, if you look at their profile, they're dog lovers. We're all dog lovers, but they're pretty, and
the similarities often outweigh the differences.
Right. So if I got to know them more, maybe I'd find points of commonality, and find out that they're a decent person, and their political beliefs were shaped by circumstances in their lives that are completely understandable.
Right.
But I don't have time to frickin' investigate every single person.
You used the phrase "happy warrior," which made me think of Hubert Humphrey.
That's where it comes from. Yeah.
And that time, political assassination was part of our lives. I can remember JFK being assassinated only because people were in church crying, and I wasn't sure why. But RFK, I remember. Martin Luther King, I remember. So political assassination,
Yeah,
although
that was a terrible summer in 1968.
yes, yes, and there was an assassination attempt on Reagan. There was a shooter with Trump. Uh, do you think that political assassination is on the rise?
No, not necessarily. We're a country with nearly 500 million guns.
Right.
Um, and so shootings, and there are we average 50 gun homicides in America every day, and
That's
another 50 gun suicides a day.
yes, and we
Um,
cannot numb ourselves to that.
but do I think that, and well, yeah, the population is increasing, gradually. Well, actually, it's pretty steady. But the
It's
number of
tapering
guns,
off the increase. Yes,
the number of guns increases by 10 to 20 million a year in America.
it's a
Um,
sign of fear.
or a sign of people like having guns. People who like guns really like guns.
That's true.
1/3 of American households are gun owning households. The average number of guns in a gun owning household is 8. And
Wow.
some people are like, and people who like guns have guns for different reasons. Like they might have 2 or 3 guns scattered throughout the house for self-defense so they can quickly get to one. They might have a shotgun for some kinds of hunting. They might have an AR-15 because it's really fun to shoot one of those semi-auto rifles.
I see.
They, so, um, you know, so it's not just out of fear. It's out of, I mean, there's politics to it too, that you're, by investing in guns, you are supporting the Second Amendment. There's a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to get too far afield from the question, which I was doing. Getting back to it, the question basically, if I can restate it properly.
Hold on one second. Like,
sure.
Freaking, well, no, I guess we're just going to put up with the barking. My wife doesn't know to she's probably outside tending to the flowers, and the dog goes crazy when she does that. And
right, because it has a fear of abandonment.
But this relates to the letter, where like I could go give my wife shit for like, when I'm talking, you can't be outside making the dog go crazy. And it's like, do I want to do that? Because she'll get defensive and she'll say, I don't know, you talk on I don't know when you're talking, and it will have a whole thing. And like, do I want to make it into a thing, or do I want to pick my battles? And this guy, Jack Ortega, seems to, in the way he's writing, want some reinforcement for the idea of picking your battles. And if your wife wants to go out and have like hook up with somebody every couple of years, don't burn down the marriage over.
Right. And from her perspective, it makes her feel young and alive, and she thinks that she needs that. Maybe she needs something else, but right now that's her solution.
Yeah, and I was thinking, how long will she be able to do that? I mean, probably indefinitely. That Paulina Poroskova, the supermodel, apparently, my wife tells me she lives in our neighborhood, and I don't know, she's got to be pushing 70 now. She still looks great, and she's like, my wife tells me about her various boyfriends and stuff, and so I guess if you're hot, you can keep doing it for quite a while.
Right. Yeah. Well, again, I'll get off track very easily and talk about Cindy Crawford, or people that have gotten older and still look terrific, and but the idea here is to accept something that kind of bugs you, but it's not worth the consequences of taking action, such as divorcing this woman, because there are so many benefits. And so, do we accept this thing that bugs us? It does bug us. So what do we do when something bugs us, but we have to accept it? We have to just put up with it. So there's a variety of strategies, and what works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. But when something is not worth the battle, you're picking your battle, and you're not going to pick this one. You're going to put up with it. Can you ever see this guy supporting her, like saying it's okay and
Can I,
meaning it?
can I see this? I mean,
The
yeah, I
question.
can, because I mean, when I wrote for the Man Show with years and years, more than 20 years ago, and one of the ideas we kicked around was, what bad thing in a woman would you I mean, this is again like looking at things through a sexist male gaze, but what what bad things about a woman would you put up with in order to get somebody who's better than you deserve?
Uh-huh.
Like in college, I there was a sorority girl who was beautiful, and but she had like tragically thick ankles, and I
Ooh.
was like, I went for her thinking maybe she feels so bad about her weirdly thick ankles that it's given her low self-esteem,
Ah,
and
we have a shot.
she'll be willing to let me you know but no, she had self-esteem. She didn't, the ankles didn't bring her down. I used to like when I was working in bars, I used to like, if I kissed somebody, if they had cigarette breath, because I'm like, they have no respect for themselves. Maybe they have so little respect that they will, take it farther with me.
Ah,
And then on the Man Show, we were talking about like, what would you put up with? And it's like missing a leg, but she's super hot. We're like, yeah, okay, yeah. This isn't a Man Show discussion. This was a discussion between my writing
right.
partner and myself. I'm
Yeah,
not going to say that the entire Man Show endorsed this point of view.
right. Okay. But when I was getting into first, we talked about acceptance, we talked about low self-esteem, we talked about fear of abandonment. There's also a spiritual principle of non-attachment. Like you don't own this other person, and you're not attached to what makes her happy in the sense of how it affects you. Because it's not so much the experience, this is a Buddhist thought, but how you react to the experience that matters. And so what can you control? You can control your reaction to it. And your reaction can be one of jealousy, one of uh, anger, but it can also be one of loving kindness and saying that this is really a meaningless fling for her own self-esteem, self-worth. And what it does to me is nothing if she doesn't bring home anything of consequence that has direct effect upon me.
Right.
And can we reach this state of non-attachment where we do not feel like we can control her behavior? And I'm using the pronoun her, but it could be the reverse situation. But you don't want to be a victim either. If someone is philandering, but in their character is just to randomly hook up in your marriage, and you don't want to be the victim of something like that, where it's just a thoughtless action that he or she doesn't care about the consequences of you. So it could get
Well,
very
I mean, you didn't early on. You mentioned fear, and that would be I would feel fear in this thing that this would destabilize the marriage.
you would think, yeah.
And we
I
hear
wonder
about
how long has this been going on? Did it say, or do you know? Or,
no, but he says every couple of years. Also
right.
says she's a good mom, which means I think they've been married. I would guess at least 6 years. If I had to guess, I'd say 10 years. Given
At
her,
least, yeah.
and she's had 4 or 5 of these mini flings. Is but like we have a lot of people in and back when in the 70s there were people living in communes. That was a huge hippie communes where a
Yeah.
bunch of people lived together with free love. And
Non-attachment. Right.
those things, spun out of control within months or years. Now you hear about thruples, 3 people in a relationship, or you hear about polyamory where people have, a number of And all those things like give me the heebie-jeebies a little bit because they sound A, humiliating, and B, unstable. The divorce rate pushes 50%, and that's just for a normal two-person relationship. For like a newfangled thing like that requires the people to be, like you said, accepting and mature. And then when you look at people at Gen Z, I don't find them any more mature than previous generations. I find them to be more distracted by social media. Maybe it's easier to have a throuple if nobody's paying attention and they're all just on their frickin' phones.
Well, that's an interesting thing because we're the same generation, and it's like, I wonder how old this couple is, because, and would that matter? To the principle of non-attachment, it doesn't matter. But to the generational perspective of people and their peers, what's acceptable to us in the time that we grew up and what's acceptable to them in the time they're growing up now might be different. And, I can't comment on that. I don't know.
Well,
You
100
might be more
years ago,
plugged in to the.
I mean, women put up with this to a greater extent than men
Certainly.
do.
Historically, that's been true.
Yeah, the first half of the 20th century until I don't know, the 60s and 70s, even 80s, was kind of like a golden age of prostitution. I remember being taken in, I don't know, the early 70s to visit New York City by my parents. And there were streetwalkers, street prostitutes, beautiful ones to my young eyes, on every street corner in Midtown Manhattan. And in Los Angeles, there were streets where the prostitutes would line the streets. It was Sunset Boulevard for female prostitutes, Santa Monica Boulevard for male prostitutes. And then the internet got those people off the streets, but you can still find them, I'm sure, if you know where to look, online. It used to be Craigslist, I don't know, 20 years ago. I don't know where it would be now, but women put up with, turned a blind eye to what their husbands did on business trips.
Because men would be men. They would tell them.
Well, or because their lives were dependent on, this marriage.
Good point.
And,
the uncertainty of
and now I would think,
yeah,
I would think and hope that, more and more people have turned away from extracurricular sex with people and have turned to just internet porn. There is so much internet porn. And yeah, it's and we could talk about the question of whether it's cheating on your spouse to look at porn. And I'd argue not. And I'd argue it's better to look at porn than to go out and look for sex with a live person and burn down your relationship. But
right. This woman in this case doesn't seem like she thinks that she's burning down the relationship by doing what she's doing. She feels secure enough in the relationship, or secure enough that if the relationship does dissolve, she'll be fine. I don't know. I'm putting thoughts into her head, but we're talking about from the male perspective as a man having this woman go out. Is it humiliating? That's the word you used earlier. And I hear some of that in the questions that he's having.
I would assume, and I mean, we're assuming a lot. This letter is only, it's like 100 words. So we don't know the details, but you can see stuff like this on TV all the time. I assume she doesn't rub it in his face, that when she does it, it's not discreet in front of the entire community. So he looks like a cuck.
Right.
But we don't know. But he says she's lively and funny. So I assume that she does, she walks around with the air of insouciance. She wears
she probably is attractive to others in general.
Yeah, she wears flowing stuff,
Yeah. Let's assume away.
and she tells the guy, I probably won't be home tonight. And he's like, really? And she's like, yeah. And, you know, and
And
and then she leaves, she kisses him. Maybe if she really wants to be condescending, she kisses him on the forehead. Don't worry your little head, and so yeah, it's hard for this guy.
for the
And when I
auntie
think
kiss
of this guy, I think, he's maybe not as tall as he might want to be. He might have, he might be a little chubby. I don't know, like, um, uh, you know,
the whole 9 yards and paint the picture.
yeah, like I don't know, what if he got a hair up his butt and was like, I'm gonna become the guy that she goes out and bangs. I don't know that would, I think she'd just laugh at any efforts like that. It depends. I mean, if he tried to change his hair or his clothing, she might laugh at that. If he got really jacked up and dropped his body fat percentage to like 11%, would she be like, ooh? Um,
But I don't think that's the source of it. His attractiveness is neither here nor there. And again, we're assuming away in her eyes. Because I had a junior high school teacher who used to always say, variety is the spice of life.
mhm.
And I think that she needs a little variety every now and then for her own self-esteem, for her own feeling of well, the way she put it in the question, I think, is being alive. And is this a harmless thing or is there harm being done? And there's no question there's some harm being done. And is she thinking that he can handle it, or that the cost benefit analysis that she's running in her head is saying the benefit to me, and I'm going to be so much better as a wife and mom if I allow myself this level of freedom. And this
I don't know if she
for
runs.
363 days out of the year, I'm going to be super mom, great wife, and can't I have this one thing?
I don't. I assume she's pretty high self-esteem, and she might just excuse everything, saying, what I do is fine, and he's lucky I don't do this every month. Maybe she,
Ooh,
like maybe she just like gets off on taking off her clothes in front of a stranger. And maybe that's enough to keep her going for another couple of years in, a relationship that's, more white bread with a guy who's, not dangerous. I
yeah,
don't, I don't know.
yeah, we don't know, but we're speculating, and there's nothing wrong with speculation if it teaches us something. And if we're speculating that this is the case, and we can put ourselves in the situation, say, how would I handle it? And we can think about what is the best um, most enlightened way to handle a situation like this.
Yeah.
And
So
I don't know, not being enlightened, but I think when the people that I talk to that are approaching enlightenment um, would not be affected by
I don't know. Like, can you be enlightened? And I changed the city, but in Beaumont, Texas.
it. That oh, we won't go down that road.
All right. I'll
I
tell
think
you.
you can be enlightened anywhere. That's
So,
my personal take.
all
But
right. So I had a
you can prove me
couple.
wrong easily enough, I'm sure.
I had a couple sexual opportunities as a back in when I was in my 20s, where I decided it wasn't worth it. Once a drunk lady, I was living with in a crappy apartment with roommates who were the maintenance engineers for the apartment. And so people would knock on the door when they needed something. And once late at night, right after the bars closed, this drunk lady knocked on my door or the apartment door, and I was the only one home. And I put on a towel and answer it. And this very pretty drunk lady um, was like, I locked myself out, or those guys around to let me in, and I'm like, nah. and she liked what she saw. I looked good in a towel, and I liked the way she looked. And if the towel came off, my wife's waving. It would have been on, and we went in for a kiss, and then she smiled, and I'd seen that her teeth were black and green, like she had never brushed her teeth ever. And that to me said, this, whatever's going on here is, out of the ordinary, and who knows what would happen. And so I grabbed the towel and I backed away. This is, I kept the towel on and was like, sorry, but because I don't like,
so your instinct for self-preservation.
Yeah, though the next day I thought about it more and thought, well, maybe I should see her in the light of day and see, maybe she had birthday cake and it had weird icing, and it's like, I went looking for her, never found her, but like,
that's an episode from the Man Show. Would you put up?
Well, another time. So, my girlfriend and I were bouncers in this huge bar that had a bounce staff of about 20 people, because on Fridays 2,000 people would enter this beer garden. And then my girlfriend dumped me and started going out with another one of the bouncers. And so I needed to leave that environment for a while because it was war among the bouncers, and so I found another bar to bounce. And this was down the street. It was what was called Boulder's Gay Bar for Straight People. It was a gay bar that was so beloved because they had the best dance floor, the best DJs, the best, and so, it was for gay people, but it had been invaded by straight people. And I got a job there for a while. And there, this beautiful lady named Sydney would come in. And I knew her during the daytime as a man. So I would see her in classes. In the daytime, he dressed as a man. At night, she dressed as a woman, and spectacular, like hotter than any woman I have ever been with. A 6-foot redhead with long curly hair and just beautiful and hot, and she was into me. She would flirt with me at the door of the gay bar, and we could have definitely gone out to her car or my car and made out. And I didn't, because I was afraid. I didn't want to deal with her penis, and I felt like that was a risk if we made out. And now 40 years later, if I found myself back there again, I might be like, I've done this. I've touched a penis 15,000 times. It's all been my penis, but it's like, like, how bad could it be? And in order to get with a woman who's a 10, except that they have, male junk.
This is a fascinating scenario. One time I was coming out to California from Massachusetts with my best friend. He was going to go to Stanford to get his master's, and he had a sister that was living in New Orleans. And so we went out to a bar, and we were having the Hurricane, I think, is the drink that
the big old drink. It's got like 3 or 4 different shots of stuff and a giant
it's like a Long Island iced tea from in a different city part of the world, right? But it was a Hurricane, and so I was feeling pretty good, and this woman was looking at me, and she was stunning. She was stunning, and she kept making eye contact with me. And so I'm, on my second or third Hurricane, and I'm looking over at her, and I'm working up the courage. The bartender leans over and says, "That's not a woman." And she was the best looking, to my Hurricane eyes, influenced eyes. I was looking at a woman that was spectacular. Yeah. Why was she coming out to me? Well, there was that other element involved. And so, that turned me off. But I was thinking later on, much as you reflected later on, is that you know that was just another human being,
Mm-hmm.
and she was definitely um, looking spectacular. So I really thought about this later on. I was turned off because of the programming that I grew up with, because that was wrong.
Well, I
And
mean, if you're conservative, MAGA and the like would listen to these stories and say, "You guys are effed up. You guys are like maybe queer, but at the very least, you're tolerating, people crossing that
gender,
bright gender line,
right.
and we should have no tolerance for that."
Well,
Uh,
now I'm not going to be drunk, and I'm more tolerant, but I'm also not entitled or inclined to do that sort of thing.
well, yeah,
So
I mean, yeah, our days
right,
of hooking up in bars, long,
right,
long, yeah.
yeah. So it's not as though it's going to present me with a challenge today, but you know, um, thinking back, I was just thinking about how my mind worked back then and how it works today. And if I had my mind in that body back then, and would I have been drunk? Maybe not. And would I have just talked to the person and given her the time of day?
Yeah.
Been nice, kind, maybe that's what's, well, that's not the only thing she was looking for, but it could be a better way to treat people, regardless of how they look, even if they have icing from a cake on their teeth. And, just,
Well, I don't
just
think
be
I
nice.
think it was decay. I think
Yeah.
that.
Well, we'll probably go with that and to make the story, but
I mean, this was written
and in
out.
that case,
Yeah.
in that case, you were probably repulsed.
Well, no, I just thought like, if that's going on with her,
What
what
else?
else is going on with her? And you're right. Like, what might I catch?
Right. Yeah. So the instincts, again, we can always talk about our instincts, and we can't control our instincts in the sense of we can't control the stimulus. But what we can work on is the control of our response.
Yeah.
And so
And
that's what I would tell this person asking this question is how would he like to be if he was his best self? Just imagine himself as being his best self. What would be the ideal response? And
well, this brings up one more thing, which is maybe, I mean, he wrote about this, right? Maybe he's into it a little himself, that his wife is so hot that she can go out and do this. And maybe, I mean, there's a certain kink that you hear about where the husband wants to see the wife getting with somebody else, that they get off on the humiliation, they get off on watching the wife being a sex object. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of that too.
yeah,
But
just the vibe I was getting was more about this feels humiliating rather than this feels exhilarating. Um, I would put myself in this guy's shoes on the humiliation side, and I would counsel him to not feel humiliated, to be his best self, and his best self has self-worth. Now we can't give him self-worth. He's got to do that himself. But this is the thing that, when you work on something long enough, uh, it has an effect. Whether you're working out to get your abs in shape or whether you're working out to get your self-esteem in shape, you can make progress. You may not become perfect overnight, and you may not become what you want, but sometimes what you want isn't what you need, and what you need is a little bit of self-esteem.
yeah, it's a weird thing to carry around. It would be like this guy, he lives his life, and most of the time you're only semi-conscious of of every circumstance of your life, because you're thinking about other stuff. But
Yeah.
a few
We're
times,
earthbound creatures.
at least a few times a day, this guy has to realize that he's married to somebody who goes out and screws around on him periodically. And there's a, I don't know, that would be a little bit of, I don't know, what would you
That
call
would
it?
be challenging. Yeah. I would feel challenged by that as well. And so I don't want to minimize it and say it has no effect on you, because it does. But what I am saying is that you can work on that effect to minimize it and not allow yourself to feel humiliated. Because my last book, geez, I don't know if I can pull this up quickly enough. It's there in the logo on the top. But my last book was No Blame, No Shame. Because shame is one of the lowest vibrations. You can't be creative operating out of shame. You can't have good consequences to your behavior operating out of shame. So how do you raise your vibration so that you're not in that vibration of shame? I'm not saying it's easy to do, but when I practice it over time, it may not ever get easy, but it gets easier. And I spend very little time in shame now.
So I've had writing jobs that were in tough environments where I would get a lot of shit for the quality of my writing. And some of it was fair and some of it wasn't. And one way I deal with it, well, one way I deal with it was I'd peek at my statistics. I'd see how much stuff I'd gotten onto the show versus other people, and we weren't supposed to do that. But
Yeah. It's human nature to do it, though.
Well, I wanted to because it reflected that I was fine in terms of what I was producing. But the other thing I did was I would tell myself, I'm making a good money doing this, and the humiliation is part of what I'm getting paid for.
Yes, and that person has to, they probably think it's part of their job, that they're getting the best out of you. I think of my phys ed teacher that way.
Not exactly. I mean, part of it was the demands of the job itself.
Right.
That
High pressure.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I used to describe it. It was like the hours and the stress. It was like being a doctor, except we didn't really help people.
Mm-hmm. Well, you gave them the gift of laughter, and that's
Yeah,
nothing.
but that's not the same thing as
Well,
as fixing a leaky heart valve.
well, that's another thing that I'm working on, is not comparing myself. And when you compare yourself, that's a recipe for low self-esteem. Because you're comparing yourself to a doctor. What do you? Yeah, come on, you're going to come up short. It's you're not saving lives.
We had one guy on the writing staff. It's so crazy that while he was secretly prepping for med school. He was secretly and he went from being a writer, with a job that everybody to going to med school, and now he's he's a full-on ER doctor but also he wrote a script for a John Cena movie that got produced. And
wow.
So that guy, I compare myself to that guy.
I get you. Yeah. He's relatable. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, how do you can't, that's just he's freaking amazing.
Yeah. And the counterpart to that is and this is, I say to it's part of my rituals every morning, is to say to myself to be free from judging. And because judging for me leads to intolerance, and the contempt. And so I go down a road when I start judging people that they're not as good as me, or I compare myself and say, I'm not as good as them. This is not the recipe for happiness. And it can make myself miserable, but the damage is not done to anyone else. Like, I have contempt for you. They don't care. I'm not as good as you. They don't care. It's only what I'm doing to myself.
Well, we're going through, this is happening on a national level with the Charlie Kirk thing, where Some people are the right, like I said, trying to get in there first with the messaging that it's the fault that it was leftist propaganda and hate that led to that radicalized this guy, and then the left is saying, nah, that it's more likely that it was like a conflict between two different groups of far right people. There's a guy named Nick Fuentes who's got his own far right following, and he wasn't getting along with Charlie Kirk, and that could have been it. And we have people judging left and right. The right is judging the left. The left is saying, you guys are full of shit. This is your fault that most terrorist violence in the US is far right violence. Then you have some voices who are saying we all need to get together and lower the temperature, and then people saying those people are letting the left off the hook, and there's just like it's a really hot, awful.
And we're painting people with such a wide brush.
Yeah, but like it's bad on the internet, right, on social media right now. It feels terrible. I remember that before Elon Musk bought Twitter. Now Elon Musk is putting far right racist messaging out on Twitter, and he can because he owns the company. But before he bought Twitter, it was a place where I went to read hundreds of jokes a day. I followed, hundreds of comedians, everybody who was professionally funny, and a lot of people who wanted to be were on there. And it was just jokes all the time, just so many of them. And then Elon Musk buys the company, brings back all these people who were banned from Twitter for racist, anti-Semitic or anti-gay or whatever, or conspiracy messaging, brought all of them back. And now there's so much of that.
Under the guise of free speech, yes.
And it's so ugly. And, most of the comedians left, and I stick with it because I'm too lazy to set up shop somewhere else. Plus, you hear that things aren't great wherever you go.
Very interesting. Well, we've gone far afield from the question and circled back to it more than once. So well done. Great question. And I'm not done processing yet. Trying to put myself in the shoes of that person, and what is the best idealist outcome, and what is the natural tendencies of human beings. Can we rise above our baser instincts and behave in a different way? These are open-ended questions in my mind, and I wrestle with them quite often. And I choose to believe in our better angels, but I said that before the last election, and it didn't work out the way that I expected it.
And the Dems are still better angeling. The Dems get a lot of criticism for not being as aggressive as the Republicans in messaging and in tactics. Chuck Schumer and Jeffries are, if you look online, there are a bunch of liberals who are like saying you guys are just lying down and getting bulldozed.
Well, it is easier to hate and easier to endorse the message of hate. But as Martin Luther King told us, you can't beat hate with hate. You have to beat it with love. And so just try to appeal to your better angels as much as you can. And I wish I could say this too will pass, but I don't have that feeling. I'm feeling that, this is maybe what's going on in our country now is the new reality. And I'm going to have to adjust to it rather than it going.
I think it's the reality for at least the next year, because until the midterms. And
then again, I'm going to have my hopes high and hold my head high, looking people in the eye while I'm doing it.
But it's more than 400 days still to the midterms, and that's a lot of day. Like with bad, new stuff, usually not great, happening every day. That's a lot of days to try to, you know.
Yeah. And if you hear the message of hate, don't let it impact you. Think about what is that person, what is their experience like sending out that hate? And when I do that, I think, oh my goodness, I have to feel a little bit sorry for that person, that they must not be happy if this is their messaging. Uh, and so if I allow them and their negative vibration to bring my vibration down, then that's on me. I got to keep my vibration up. That's the only thing I can do. That's the only control that I have. Can't control the external world, and I can't control other people. So, the only thing I can do is look inside, and it is an inside job, and there's no change without change within. So work on me first, and then be the best me I can be when I interact with others.
So
And
I take a beta blocker,
yes.
which keeps my adrenaline limited. So you've done it through meditation, and I'll take a pill.
Right.
So
Well,
I haven't punched anybody since I started taking this pill.
so whatever works for you, keep doing it.
Yeah, the last time I socked somebody, and they deserved it, was 1998 or 99. So
Yeah. And so keep doing what you're doing, Rick, as long as it's working for you.
all right, thank
All
you.
right. I will see you next week.
Okay, see you then.
Bye. All right. That was Rick Rosner, Emmy nominated writer. And besides this book that I showed to you earlier, I also have this book, Freedom. Freedom was my first attempt to tell my story of recovery. But I don't want you to go by without knowing that I also wrote Chess for Dummies. I've written 6 books on chess, a total of 8 books. And so, and I've done a lot of these types of broadcasts. I clicked on that by accident, and I was just trying to double click on that to make it go away. And go to airu.tv, the website, airu.tv. See this episode and others. And you'll see that I did a season called Change Your Mind. I did a season called Calm Down with James EADE. And this is a season called EADE IT. And I hope you are well and be well and keep others in your life well, because we all can only influence